Judas and the Black Messiah. What is this movie about? Well, this movie tells the story of the betrayal of Fred Hampton, the chairman of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party in Chicago, by the hands of Bill O'Neill, an FBI informant. It stars Daniel Kaluuya as well as Lakeith Stanfield as the two leads of the movie. I mean, arguably Daniel Kaluuya supporting, but definitely lead actor Lakeith Stanfield. Anyway,
I have no idea what that was about.
I don't know. It's just something came out of me,
Yeah. No, just for context, by the way, if our listeners are confused, both Lakeith Stanfield and Daniel Kaluuya were nominated for Best Supporting Actor.
Who was the lead of this movie?
Jesse Plemons?
Apparently.
Uncle Sam?
Jesse Plemons? J. Edgar Hoover? I don't know. But also co-stars Dominique Fishback as his, I was about to say wife, but baby mama, Deborah Johnson, as well as like a slew of other actors from like notable young up-and-coming black actors who've starred in things like Moonlight, Sorry to Bother You, Get Out, like a ton, just everybody in this movie kind of worked together already in various fashions. It's very interesting. I also want to shout out the fact that the story was created. I mean, it's written by Shaka Khan and it's written by Shaka Khan and Will Burson. Shaka Khan, this is actually like his first major movie. I believe he worked on a short film a few years back, but this is kind of the thing that's really bringing him into prominence. But Will Burson and the Lucas brothers all have comedic backgrounds. I really love the fact that this movie was made by comedians in a way.
That almost makes no sense.
It makes no sense with the way this movie feels. I want to ask you before I really get into this movie. Did you know about Fred Hampton at all, or like his story?
Oh, you're outing me.
I'm not outing you. I just know because like I will admit I didn't know about him. I knew about him by the time this movie came out, but I didn't know about him till like maybe I want to say 2013. I learned it in like a summer. Like this summer class that I was doing with with Simone, and when I learned about him, I was like, "Wait, what? What happened to this guy? Like, that's insane." Yeah. So yeah, did you have any context of who he was?
No, I didn't. And I'm just gonna admit that I knew about the Black Panther Party, obviously, and Bobby Seale, but I did not know about the Rainbow Coalition or Fred Hampton, which is so funny because he keeps popping up in different things.
Yeah.
He was in Trial of Chicago 7, obviously. We talked about that crossover, and I'm sure it will come up again today. But he also, Fred Hampton Jr. and his mother was also in Dave Chappelle's Block Party, which I watched for the first time recently. I was like, wow, man, I wish I had watched that.
Having the context of
and like, man, I would have... But this is a story that I'm very happy is in the public sphere now.
Yeah, because, like, this isn't...
Twice.
You're right. This isn't really a story that they talk about in, like, school. Like, at no point... I mean, they tell you about the Black Panther Party in school, like, especially during the Civil Rights Movement. But you never hear about, like, what happened to some of those leaders. Like, how the FBI... really had a hand, not even really, like they straight up had a hand in eliminating most of these guys, most of the leaders of this party in various locations around the U.S. And I mean, this movie is upfront about it. Like from the first scene, they talk about like the times, but the first scene, I think the first character on screen is J. Edgar Hoover, and he's like, "This guy's a menace."
Yeah, it's one of J. Edgar Hoover's most infamous quotes is calling the Black Panther Party like the greatest threat to national security.
Yeah, which these guys were doing what? Giving lunches to kids?
Exactly. I didn't know if you're going to mention that, but they juxtaposed it with this whole introduction talking about the Black Panther Party that you do not necessarily hear about. The party that gives food to young kids, that offers support and resources to marginalized communities
who brandished weapons, but like really that's because it was an era where they really needed to protect themselves from white people kirking out.
But hey, last time I checked, the Second Amendment was a thing.
Yeah.
Poetry slam snaps.
Absolutely. So yeah, like I love this movie. I just to get straight to it, I love this movie with every fiber of my being. And when the moment the trailer dropped and I saw the title of it, I was like, ooh, Ooh,
the title is amazing.
The title is amazing, and I mean, straight up, Judas and the Black Messiah. Like, you know what's gonna happen. But like, for a lot of us, like, I mean, me personally, I didn't know that that's how that went down. I didn't know there was a Judas. I just thought that the FBI or the cops rolled up and just started blasting. Really, I did not know that there was an entire investigation under the nose of this poor man. The writing in this movie is truly incredible. I think everybody does a great job in terms of like really developing these characters. They really do a good job of making you feel for, I mean, one, like really falling in love with Fred Hampton, really really realizing that like this dude was like a good soul, like a good person who really just wanted to help his people, but also not even just his people, everyone. Like the whole idea of the fact that like he created the Rainbow Coalition, which was a combo of Black Panthers of two different like sections, as well as like a Latin, kind of, I would say the Latin equivalent. I can't remember the name of it right now, but the Latin equivalent of the Black Panther Party, and rednecks. Like, what? Like, that's insane, and not really. I mean, like, that's kind of something we need to see, and especially like nowadays, we need to see that kind of union. And the fact that this man did it during the 70s, what?
Yeah, and that was their primary means of assassination.
Yeah.
Or that was the FBI's rationale. They decided that this coalition, this combination of different ideologies, sort of democracy in a better way that America was doing it, a different party system or a multi-party system that had communication and empathy and understanding. And they decided that was grounds to assassinate. To destroy. Like, it's absolutely horrible, the things that we see in this movie. We talked a little bit about, the Jackson, like J. Edgar Hoover calling them the biggest national security threat, which I don't think they've ever used a term for to describe the Ku Klux Klan, but that's okay.
No. Why would they be a problem?
Yeah, right. But I mean, like, it's interesting because you obviously see like state violence and institutional violence from the perspective of like the black people in the movie, but also Jesse Plemons, who plays an FBI agent. And Jesse Plemons, by the way, is one of my favorite actors working today. I do have a Hostiles poster over here.
Oh yeah, he is.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. And he was really good. That was the first movie I think I ever
He
saw
starred
him
in Breaking Bad, and like everyone was like, "You're the creepy guy now."
Yes.
I remember when he was on Friday Night Lights. He was so lovable.
Yes, but through his character, he gets the inside perspective, right? We get to hear unfiltered FBI conversations, which is where you really start to see the disgusting disparity between, I don't know, white terrorism and black terrorism, right?
Yeah,
how that's
how
that's treated at a federal level.
Yeah.
And what's so interesting about that, like, I didn't expect to see from a white perspective or from a white point of view, like a condemnation of state violence. But I mean, like, again, this is not like the biggest point of the film. It's definitely more in the hands of.
What do you mean? Jesse Plemons is the lead actor.
Shoot, might as well be. The biggest question of the award season: who is the lead actor?
Who is the lead? Get ready for all the freaking bits about that at the Oscars this year.
Oh yeah, that's probably
it's gonna be the number one joke.
Yes, absolutely. But it was really, really, really good. And before I get into my praises, I do want to make some critiques because they do have to do with the FBI agents.
Yeah.
Some of these scenes just did not work for me. There is a very, very awkward encounter between Jesse Plemons' character and J. Edgar Hoover.
Oh,
Martin Sheen, by the way, wearing more makeup than Dracula.
Yeah, I know.
And I love Martin Sheen, but it was just
they really do a good job of making J. Edgar Hoover look like a creature, though. Like, he looks inhuman.
Maybe that's part of the point.
That's probably part of the point, yeah.
And there were just some things that did not work well for me there, and unfortunately it also carried over into the FBI dynamic with Lakeith Stanfield's character. Lakeith's position as Judas, Judas and Jesus is probably like the first and probably the penultimate story of betrayal, right?
Yeah.
And Judas arguably is in the more interesting narrative position, an entertaining narrative position. But the script doesn't really get into the moral dilemmas that he's facing, I don't think.
They do at moments.
But I would argue that...
But it's not until like the very end, I would say.
Yeah, when it becomes a question of killing. But how about all of the intelligence he's giving him, right?
Yeah.
You know, Jesse Plemons says at one point that Lakeith is either like the greatest actor in the world, or he's starting to believe what he's hearing and what he's... or like the Black Panther Party, right?
Yeah.
And I would agree with that. And I think Lakeith Stanfield does a good job of playing both sides of that boat. But I don't think there's enough conversation about the ethics going on in his head. If he even has ethics.
Yeah.
You know, he's presented at the beginning of the film as an apolitical character, right?
Right.
You know, they screen him with, how did you feel when Martin Luther King was killed? How did you feel when Malcolm X was killed? But is he amoral as well?
I mean, I think that alone with that conversation that he had when he was talking about like his reaction to those assassinations, I think that alone basically executes the idea that he is amoral. I think that through hanging out with these characters and like really getting to know Fred and realizing like, I mean, he straight up says at one point, like early on in the movie, he's like, these guys aren't terrorists. Like, what are we doing here? And they just kind of hush him off like, just keep doing your job. I think that conversation in the beginning of the movie alone kind of sets up that, like, yeah, he doesn't really care about anything going on. Like, he focuses, he's selfish. He focuses more on himself and, like, his issues. His whole motivation is, I don't want to go to jail.
Yeah, survival.
So, yeah, it's survival. It's literally just really, for the most part, it's a movie. This is a story of survival and what people are willing to do in order to save their own ass. Mm-hmm. But by the end of the movie, once he's hung out with Fred and all the other Black Panthers and realizes, like, dag, like, they're really fighting for stuff that is important. They're definitely not terrorists. Like, what's the point of this whole thing? And then, of course, at that point, then he's asked to not take him out, but, like, to help them take him out. That's when his moral, I was going to say moral fiber, his morals start to question, like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? Should I do this? But, of course...
But this is after years and years, right?
Is it years, though? Or is it...
Well, yeah, Fred Hampton was in jail
for years, fair. Oh my God, yeah, fair.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that. So, yeah,
this is over a long period. This is a long period of time to not really know what he's thinking about this predicament that he's in. I mean, like, I would just like to know a little bit more about how he feels, because he seems to just be okay to take the money and run.
Yeah.
And, you know, you do make a good point that he is, like, a selfish character. There are two shots that I really, really, really like in this film, and one of them, they both take place in, like, the back, or, like, in the car, right? And it's Lakeith Stanfield, and he just has, like, this laugh. He gets
away, my God, yes.
Yes, he gets away with two situations, right? There's a carjacking in the beginning of the movie, which is how he gets caught up in this
basically,
FBI
straight up how we're introduced to his character. Yeah,
absolutely. Exactly. But then also when...
He's talking about how there's a rat.
Yes, and he's overcompensating. He's overperforming, and he leaves the chapter, right? He leaves their building, their HQ, and he gets in his car and drives away. He does the same exact laugh. Yeah. And I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That deep down, I mean, that to me, that scene especially just shows deep down who he is. Hell, I mean, even when there's the shootout during, like, at the actual headquarters, what's his first move? Oh yeah, I want to go to the roof and you know, just get to the high ground. And he tries to book it, but of course he can't. And then after, like, finally the dude at the bottom of the stairs, like, decides to come upstairs, he gets the hell out of there. He is selfish. He doesn't give a shit about these people.
Okay, to be fair, a shootout is not what he signed up
for. Very fair. I mean, and he shows that in the next scene. He's like, yo, what the hell? But, like, I mean, for the most part, like, those two scenes alone to me show, and both of them are him just driving away from the headquarters, show who he is as a person. Like, he's not a good person. Of course, like, he doesn't want to kill people, but he's not a good person.
Yeah, all right. I mean, this is fair enough, you know.
Yeah.
I just wish that the film, I wish I had heard the film say something, because I feel like to get these perceptions, I rely a lot on Lakeith's performance.
Yes. Okay.
And, you know, that's not like a bad thing. I think Lakeith does a fantastic job with what he's given. But again, if the script had maybe said something a little bit more specific, I think a great opportunity to get a little bit more in depth about the situation is that conversation he has inside of Plemons' house.
Yeah.
You know, I think that was a missed opportunity. But, you know, talking about performances in general, I really, really like the contrast between Lakeith Stanfield and Daniel Kaluuya, because Stanfield is sort of playing like he's in a pensive position.
Yeah.
You know, he's a little bit nervous, and like we said, there are times where he has to overcompensate to sort of, you know, seal the deal, to preserve himself. And then you counter that with Daniel Kaluuya, right? Yeah. Who is this mammoth presence.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's assertive, he's dominating, and most of all, he's infectious.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is that Lakeith Stanfield, despite like the nervousness that I think is very perceptible to the audience because we know what's happening.
Yeah.
Right? Daniel Kaluuya obviously doesn't see it. And his character has like this full steam ahead, like we're moving forward with our political campaign mentality. That is just, that's the part of the betrayal story that this movie gets very, very right.
Yeah. He's so focused that he's wearing blinders to the obvious stuff going around him. Like anyone, like, one of the Panthers in the movie, they called immediately. They're like, there's something off about that guy. But of course, like, Lakeith gets his way out of it. But like us as the audience, we're like, dude, please, for the love of God, look the other way. There's some shady shit going on.
Absolutely. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're good. I just, like, Kaluuya is so good in this movie. Like, I remember one of the criticisms I heard about this movie was the age of the actors. Because Fred Hampton died at 21. And Bill, I believe, was only, I think he was a year younger or older. I can't remember which way it went. But they were all kids. Like, these were kids doing all this. And Daniel Kaluuya, I think at this point, is like in his early 30s, maybe late 20s. And same with Lakeith. But seeing Daniel's performance, I can't think of anyone else who could handle that presence. Like you said before, like the moment he comes on screen, you're like, that guy's in charge. That guy, and like the way he carries his voice when he's not even just talking to people, but like when he's on stage and he's giving these like long speeches and shouting, like you immediately believe whatever he's selling you, because it's all good. And I don't know of any other actor, any young actor could really carry a performance like that. You need someone a little bit older who can kind of blend the look of, like, obviously looking a little bit older than 21, but like still feeling like, you know, they have a lot of life to give and life to, you know, put on screen. So I'm totally fine with the age problem.
Yeah, problem. I mean, like, and it's something that is ultimately said, you know, in the final typescript. And then it's also kind of like a revealing factor. Yeah. You know, which is what's interesting. I think that might just be like a happy accident.
But you're like, whoa, what?
Yeah, he's 21. Yeah. Like, that kind of puts a whole different perspective on it. But it's something that I love about his performance is that he's also able to go from that commanding presence to, like, being a shy little romantic.
Yeah.
You know, his relationship with his girlfriend
is Deborah.
Yeah, with Deborah. And I didn't write down the actress's name either, and I feel really bad.
Dominique Fishback.
Dominique Fishback. Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Just, and I'm feeling bits of oh my God, what was the in Beale Street? Beale Street could talk. Man, I could totally blank on that name.
Absolutely.
I get elements of that kind of dynamic between them, but
you know the one female Black Panther in the movie, like the big fro? She's the little sister in Beale Street.
Really?
Yeah, dude.
Wow.
Dude, like everybody in this movie has done really good work.
Very cool. But I love what you get, a real profile of who Daniel Kaluuya or Fred Hampton.
Yeah. For Daniel Kaluuya, yeah. Hopefully.
But you get a real profile of Fred Hampton. You know, I feel like a lot of times when we're talking characters in history, you get the Trial of the Chicago 7 version. The sort of flat historical portrait that knocks off like the different Wikipedia and history.com boxes, right?
Yeah.
And the characters say the right things. They do what the characters did, but they don't feel like a person.
Yeah.
You know, it feels like a reenactment more than a performance in some cases.
Yeah.
That's not the case here. This is a real person who breathes and he has life. And I would say that's the case for most of the characters in this movie, especially Deborah.
Yeah, no, I wrote down like that her performance, there's such a warmth to her. And like you immediately you believe their love, and it flashes you back, like especially with me, like it makes me think of my parents, and I immediately fell in love with her character and like the way she portrayed herself, and especially her final scene, like one,
oh my God,
like Dominique Fishback isn't starred in that many things, but like this movie will absolutely make her a star, as well as Shaka King. Shaka King, the director, he will absolutely work for years. He for this to be like his first major movie, fantastic. But Dominique in her final scene, it's a look. It's nothing more than like her just looking past the camera and things happening behind her. And you know, like most people might think like, oh, in certain scenes like you have to overreact, overact, and give a real sense of emotion. But like sometimes the best emotion is none or the slightest. The way that she just like the way her face looks when she knows the outcome of what's about to happen and that it does, it's haunting, and you know there's nothing she could do about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it breaks your heart, and especially because you see in general like how hard she tried to protect her man, and history, we know the history. It didn't work out.
You know, and her character is so interesting because they meet through like the Black Panther Party. You know, she goes to one of his events and they start flirting and everything. But then you see the shift. You know, she gets pregnant. We mentioned Fred Hampton Jr. earlier, so I don't think that's a spoiler. But you know, then there becomes a shift in priority. You know, in her that I think is interesting to explore. She writes this poem asking whether she's like a bad motherfucker or is she just a bad mother. And it's because she's bringing her daughter or son, excuse me, bringing a child into a very unstable world with a father who, as history would suggest at that time, it does not take like a front page headline to say like, hey, look, the government is taking out black leaders.
Like, the dude had the biggest target on his back.
And it's just interesting to see that shift in her. But you're absolutely right about Shaka King as well. And I think he does a really good job of his shot composition is fantastic.
Such a gorgeous movie.
There's one, and the cinematography is great as well, but there's one shot I do want to highlight, and I was disappointed because I avoided trailers, right? But I saw the trailer today, and of course the shot I'm thinking of is the one that they started with.
Oh yeah, I was about to say when he rolls
Jesse
up.
Plemons in the crowd.
Yeah,
fantastic, right? Totally menacing. And another one, and this is another very powerful scene in the film. Shaka King does a great job of shooting violence, by the way. Steady cameras, not flash edits. I think Trial of the Chicago 7 was a little bit different. It hid a lot of its violence by having the subjects really close to the camera as well. So it's kind of like a little quick jab as opposed to like seeing the whole event, which I think gives more power to a moment. But there's one character whose friend is killed by the police, and he seeks first he seeks answers, but when that seems to lead him into a corner,
he seeks vengeance.
He seeks vengeance. And there's this one shot where he kind of turns into like a predator. And you know, I may just be totally overthinking, but this is our podcast, so this is where
we can overthink our own podcast.
You know, it's just like this is a completely different approach to revolution, right? He's becoming a predator, a source of violence. He loses his discipline. Discipline is a word that is tossed a lot in this film. And I think it was just an interesting way to show the violence in that scene of him hunting the cops versus the shootout with the cops.
It's a thing of it goes from being, trying to not even trying, but like portraying himself as like what he is to what they think he is.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what happens when anger starts to set in. Yeah. That's what happens when you lose your discipline. Thank you for mentioning that. That's the point that I was going to.
No, you're good.
You said it much better than I did. That's why. So I'm absolutely thanking you here. But we're time's getting a little tight.
Okay.
A little bit. So, final thoughts.
Let's see. My final thoughts. If you know how the story ends, then this movie will feel like a ticking time bomb. It's a raw look of how far people are willing to go in order to save their own skins, really. As well as how far the government is willing to go to quiet the voice of one man. The acting is phenomenal. The cinematography and direction is immaculate. This is a fantastic movie. I'm going to get a 5 out of 5.
Yeah, very good. And, I like this final thought segment. It is scripted, but, like,
why not?
Who cares? It articulates everything. Move on. You know where we stand. So, my final thoughts. The force and authority of Judas and the Black Messiah make the fact that it's only Shaka King's second feature, but first big one, almost unbelievable. The film reminds audiences of the yet-to-be excitement behind its two leads, while also extending that excitement to the man behind the camera. Yeah. But the movie most powerfully reminds us of the yet-to-be promise of Fred Hampton. A visionary activist who, like so many young leaders of his time, was killed for the ideals deemed unfit by an unfit authority. Words. This is powerful filmmaking and a fantastically sad story of betrayal. Stanfield and Kaluuya work opposite of one another to maintain the balance that keeps this story tight and tense. And, when Judas and the Black Messiah is with its leads, it becomes clear that there are a few movies from last year that are as well done as this one. I'm also giving it a 5 out of 5. This is one of my favorite movies of the year.
Absolutely. Same.